You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
Welcome back to the Integration Station, you beautiful souls. I'm here with a wonderful guest, Stevie Funfur. This is, the fun guy. We've had a couple of fun guys on, but, this one's talking more about the other kinds of medicinal mushrooms. This is real integration work, right? Nourishing our bodies, not, just, working with the psychedelics. It's about preparing our body for that. It's about that connection back with nature, and that's what this guy's bringing to the table today. So I'm just going to pass over to Stevie, and he can share a bit more about his story, what brought him here, and all that kind of good stuff. We'll have some fun along the way too.
Hey guys, Steve here, Stevie_Funfur on Instagram. And I got a message from Ashley inviting me to come on the show and talk a little bit about my own experiences and about functional mushrooms and a whole wide range of other topics, including foraging and just probably I think you follow my Instagram, so maybe, just the massive changes in my life from going from a busy professional dude, trains, planes, and automobiles in the music business for most of my adult life to dropping right out. And, all my friends make fun of me that, I guess I fall right squarely into that category of the cliche rock and roll recluse thing. So, and just going right off the grid and getting right out back into the forest.
Yeah, we have a friend on this, he comes on this show sometimes, but he hosts through our network, and his name's Steve Mather Mayhem, and he was rock and roll too.
Another Steve,
now
good
he
name.
hosts some, pardon? Steve, good name, yeah.
Another Steve, good name.
Yeah, he now hosts Mushy Moments, so a very similar story. I should connect the two of you at some point.
Yeah, for sure. We should chat it up,
Yeah, Steve and Steve, the fun guys. Share, how did that transition go for you, like being in that world? Can you talk more about that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. Like so for most of my adult life and my professional career, I was in the music business. I started out as a guitar player and singer, and I play all the instruments actually, and toured all over the world making music. And I was kind of like a hired gun guy. Guitar player primarily is what I used to get hired for, and musical direction. I used to write a lot of charts and go on tour with bands, kind of putting the musical picture together and then getting it out on the road on stage. And lived and worked pretty much all over the world in a bunch of different countries, etc. But during that process, unbeknownst to me, I was kind of wrecking my body. That lifestyle, as much as I wouldn't trade it for the world, I don't think I'd go back to it. It was pretty hard on my body. There's some hard living involved. If you've ever heard any of the stories, it doesn't seem like that at the time, but it is. And I think as a result of all those years on the road and the buses and the planes and the not being able to control when you eat, sleep, and when sound check is, and going right to the show and the late nights, there was a lot of times where, we used to joke about the day people, where it's like we'd be coming out of the club at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there's like, ladies with strollers and dudes with briefcases walking down the street. And that kind of stuff starts to dawn on you, where it's like, okay, there's a whole other world out here that I'm maybe missing, But anyway, long story short, my hands started to give out on me. I have a degenerative polyarthritic condition called psoriatic arthritis. It's one of these modern autoimmune diseases. And a lot of that, for me, I found out was due to just poor habits and diet, is the reason that disease ended up, sort of coming for me. And to make a long story short, as my hands started to give out, I started to transition into the production side of things, and I started a bunch of recording studios and made a bunch of records. And that was a long, long period in my career where I was no longer playing anymore because my hands were not cooperating, even though my mind still wanted to be there. And I built up a business of a bunch of recording studios all over the place, and was sort of living through vicariously through other musicians making records rather than actually playing and touring. But eventually the disease got to the point where I was popping like 6, 8, 10 pills to get out of bed in the morning. This disease, it's in my spine, it's all over my body, etc. And there were many days where I had trouble just picking up a coffee cup in the morning. It was so bad for me. And then, I'm going to fast forward a little bit to today where I'm, I feel like I'm 18 again. I'm, reaching out of the water with one arm and dragging a deer out of the forest with the other, and out growing over 1,000 pounds of food a year in my organic gardens, and fishing and foraging and hunting the vast majority of my diet, and using functional mushrooms as literally the only source of medicine that I need. And I'm happy to tell you that, despite being advised by doctors all over the world that, oh no, that's it for you, man. It's in there now. There's no cure for what you have. Just get used to it. Start living with it. Change careers. Strong possibility eventually. You end up in a wheelchair and all that. To having near zero symptoms for over 4 years. And functional mushrooms and healthy outdoor lifestyle have been the catalyst to that massive change in my life. And I've since started, writing and teaching courses on all of these subjects, trying to spread that good word. Nature will provide if you let it. And there is a better way, I believe, than harsh chemical drugs, who in many cases, in my case anyway, the symptoms from that methotrexate that I was on, that chemotherapy drug for 6 years, were worse than the damn disease, So nature provides, man. It's out there. And for a long time in our young culture, I feel like, especially here in Canada and the States, you're not that much older than us. We're a 250-year-old country, culture here in Canada. And fortunately or unfortunately, modern medicine was born at about the same time that we started, getting our thing going here. And unfortunately, holistic medicine and functional mushrooms, psychedelics, as your program is largely about, etc., those have all been looked down upon by the establishment and the medical establishment as like a bit of hippie nonsense or whatever. And what my course
sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll finish up and you can interject, but here's what I want to tell you, and this is what I teach on a regular basis multiple times a week, is that it is not hippie nonsense. We have science and data proving out what our Aboriginal ancestors and ancient cultures around the world have known for millennia, since before pre-recorded history. There are powerful medicines out in our forests, and people tend to forget, like, almost every modern, even synthesized drug comes from a natural source originally. And why not go straight to the source?
Why do you need the middle guy? You don't, like, what does that do? It gives you a cut product so that somebody else can make a profit.
100%. There's that. And also too, just the sense of personal empowerment and self-reliance. I think that's a huge part of it for me, is that what I try to teach people in my courses every single week is that you can do this stuff for yourself. Now, we're missing a certain amount of science on this, and I'm kind of a nerd in that regard, in that, like, I'm all about the data. I'm all about what do we get back from laboratories in vitro studies, and what I'm looking forward to, especially with functional mushrooms and psychedelics, is the in vivo human clinical trials, which we are lacking in many, many instances. I see a lot of junk science out on the internet, and a lot of snake oil being sold out there. And a lot of what I try to teach in my courses is the reality of the situation and where we're at, all the positives, but also the reality of the scientific studies that have been done. And we've got a mountain of them in the last 10 years or so, and that it's growing exponentially, the actual data that we have on these compounds and the way they affect our bodies, etc. So I'm trying to walk that line between being a little bit of a proselytizing, like being a little bit of a cheerleader or a poster boy for the efficacy of medicinal or functional mushrooms, and also trying to debunk a lot of the myths. You get a lot of people online who are just saying all kind of untrue, sort of like, I don't know how to put it nicely. Like a lot of like, just with, I do a whole course on the chaga fungus. There's 200 known medicinal compounds in there, and we have in vivo studies on very few of them. So with the chaga fungus specifically, you're going to hear people telling you that it's this panacea, it's going to fix everything that's wrong with you, and you just drink a cup a day, and all of a sudden you're going to be Superman. That is not true. Okay, those are not facts based on science. But what is true is that there are many, many powerful medicinal compounds contained in that fungus, which can help you for very specific problems in very specific instances when used appropriately. And that's kind of the line I'm trying to walk, is between those two worlds. I hate this thing online where there's like, I find it a little bit juvenile, where there's like, like the hard science, modern medicine people who are like, oh yeah, those hippies are bad. And then you have all the people who are into like the wellness space and holistics and functional mushrooms, for example, who are pointing their fingers at doctors saying, oh, those people are charlatans, and it's a system, and it is a system, and it is corrupt, and there are problems with it. 100%. I agree with all that stuff. But doctors are necessary, and we have to trust their expertise on certain things. That there's a million conditions that functional mushrooms can't help you with either. Right. So anyway, I'm going on a long tangent here. I'll let you interject. But anyway, that's my point of view and what I try to teach every single day,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Yeah. There's so much I want to say, like, about all of it. But, just, coming back to where the medical fields came from, and then to where it is now, in the beginning, it was women and people of all kinds of people, but the people of color and women were taken out in order to replace that with lab coats made for specific men who hit a certain bar. Now it's completely run and funded from Big Pharma. The board of directors for the education of doctors is Big Pharma itself. This is where the corruption comes in. This is a really big problem. However, there is also 100%. A lot of different countries that integrate both holistic medicine and New Age medicine. There is a lot that can be done. New Age medicine, the doctors themselves, for the most part, are good people. Some of them have lawsuits for pushing 100%. Pharmaceuticals and different things. Some make big mistakes, but when somebody goes to school,
we should be suing those people. That's corruption. Yeah. That's the definition of corruption. Yeah.
Yeah, for a payoff. Yeah. But they're trained in the system for that.
I have like.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, we've got a little bit of a delay here. Sorry, audience, but we're trying to. we'll work it out. We'll get a rhythm going on our delay here. But sorry, finish your point. I think I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like there's a lot of countries now that work with both systems. And I think that it's our personal responsibility, like you were saying, to integrate both systems into our life. Because the doctors and the nurses, like, they're just people just like us. However, they've invested a lot of money and are in a lot of debt to Big Pharma for their education. And that puts a lot of pressure on them. And some of them, because they get kicked kickbacks from pharmaceuticals and from how short their appointments are, how many people they can fit into a day. You know, they get stuck in the system because they want to pay off their debt, but they're like us. They went in there, they're like, I want to help people. You know, when I talk to a doctor or a nurse that's like, you know, having a breakdown and wants to go private practice, that's what they're saying is, you know, I had intentions to, you know, be a good person, and I see I don't fit here, or I see I'm unhappy here,
So,
you know, and
so on
go
that
on.
particular point, this is a thing that I discuss with people often, was like, you can't blame doctors and healthcare practitioners for not knowing a lot of this stuff with regards to herbal remedies and plants and mushrooms, functional mushrooms, etc. Because the systems that form them, as you rightly point out, are funded and created by the very industries who sell the product, right? So there's like a blatant and obvious conflict of interest between the way that those institutions are funded and formed and the education that those people receive. So it's like that whole finger pointing thing of like doctors are bad or whatever, that is just not the case. It's it's people who probably got into it because A, you know, if they do well at it, they make a nice living and they can support their family, and B, that they want to help people, right? They just don't know this stuff, you know? And as science, I think, progresses and we get more in vivo and especially in vivo human clinical trials on a lot of the stuff, which are all bearing out the positive effects that we kind of know about anecdotally anyway. Doctors are changing. Doctors are changing their minds. Let me give you a personal anecdote that I think is really, really poignant for this particular point. So I lost my dad about just over a year ago from a very aggressive type of cancer. In his original diagnosis, he was given less than 14 months to live. Okay. In conjunction with his oncologist, I put him on a cocktail of the chaga fungus and the turkey tail fungus, and we had him drinking a couple of cups a day because of like a ton of clinical research, especially out of Japan with the turkey tail fungus and a substance called PSK, Crestin, that gave him an extra almost 3 years over his diagnosis. Now, that was in conjunction with his oncologist, who happened to be a very open-minded person. She was amazing, and she had done some reading on the subject, and she was thrilled to meet someone who had not only access to wild specimens, but knowledge on the thing. And then we had a lot of conversations in that time about, and I pointed her to a lot of studies, especially like I mentioned, out of Japan, where Crestin, which is the commercial name for this particular compound that's kind of been pseudo-isolated out of the turkey tail fungus, has been the #1 adjunct anti-cancer therapy in Japan since the 1980s. Okay, it is not even legal in America, and it cannot be prescribed by a doctor here in Canada. Health Canada has not approved it.
Everywhere.
It grows everywhere. It's one of the most common mushrooms in the forest, and it's the only
Not a
source
lot of
we have of
flavors.
PSK in nature, and it helps people. Okay, so look at that one anecdotal, my story with my dad, right? Like, he got less than 14 months. We got an extra 3 years with him. He got almost an extra 3 years on this planet to resolve his affairs and have some comfort and time with his family, etc. And I can't tell you with 100% certainty with a rubber stamp on it that it was the PSK or the turkey tail or the chaga fungus that did it. But here's what I can tell you. We have a ton of data on that one compound. Both of those mushrooms are packed full of antioxidants, polysaccharides, etc., beta-D-glucans, etc., which are just amazing general health tonics, and that probably helped him fight off the negative effects, not only of the cancer, but of the chemotherapy. Okay? And these are just realities. This is how these mushrooms work. There are extremely complex interactions, bioactive interactions with our human physiology, which is very, very complex and different for everybody. But in the right circumstances, they can work.
Yeah, and chaga too, I know, is really good for pulling out radiation out of the body and things like that too. So people who are in treatment for cancer, a lot of the time in certain areas, those clinical people are still using chaga or chaga for to help balance that so that people aren't as sick. so that your body
yes.
can pull out, like how if you go on an antibiotic and 5 hours later you take a probiotic, you build up the good bacteria, but you're also killing the bad bacteria. And so working with chaga mushrooms while chemotherapy and or radiation, that can be very helpful. I've heard as well, but you're doing them in a sort of rhythm, like it's not together. It's
for sure. There's all kind of different ways and dosages and combinations, and the turkey tail fungus is which one I want to come back to, because that's really like the one we have the most data on in terms of cancer fighting abilities. There's here I'll tell you the problem with like that symbiosis between the chemotherapy treatment and functional mushrooms, the compounds contained within them, is that with the exception of extracted compounds that PSK or Creston, that they do very they've had decades of not only clinical trials but experience in the lab isolating it and getting it down into a regular predictable dose. The way that we did it with my dad, for example, was via hot water extraction and an alcohol extraction, which is a little bit less predictable. Okay. So until we get these things regulated here and we can get them into either like a sort of regular sort of pill form or another whatever method of getting it into the body in a dose that is not different from specimen to specimen. Like, what I mean is that, turkey tail that I harvest this fall might have a different percentage or concentration of those compounds than the ones I harvest last year, or even from batch to batch, from that log to that log, etc. So that's what we need to kind of work out to get those things in a more stable form in use with in conjunction with some of these things like they do in Japan. Unfortunately, we just don't do it here yet for kind of a dumb reason. And that is that the FDA and both Health Canada can't put their finger on one, what we call the principal active ingredient. Okay. It's actually a group of compounds that work together in conjunction in a harmonious way to fight that cancer. And just under our weird little classification of things, the way that Health Canada here in Canada or the FDA does in the States, they need one of them. And it's a bunch of different compounds that work together in harmony. So it's like kind of like this weird bureaucratic nonsense that's holding back PSK, Creston. But we're going to get to it eventually. I'm quite certain of it. It has to, because especially with mushrooms, there's so much forward movement in the area of functional mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms. So much science coming out. They can't ignore it for much longer.
Yeah. But they did make us scared of it for a very long time, like right. It's so crazy. Mushrooms and frogs are like all over old school books, old school cookware, all that kind of stuff. But then if you talk to somebody about mushrooms, they're like, oh my God, that's dirty, or that's scary, or you're going to die, or that's dangerous. What do you mean you're doing that with your kid? Like, right. There's all of these things that, but there's a reason why, it was shared through pictures for so long, is so that we would remember. And
in oral traditions. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
so mushrooms. Yeah, 100%. Mushrooms. So 2 points on that. So mushrooms, for those of you out there watching who are maybe or listening that are unfamiliar with mushrooms and how they function. So mushrooms are, in essence, like, to really dumb it down, they're kind of little chemical factories. They make thousands of different compounds. Okay. Some of those compounds are delicious. Those are edible mushrooms. Some of those compounds can heal us. Okay. Some of those compounds can make us very sick, and some of them can kill us dead. They're little, but the point is that these chemicals have been around in nature since the very beginning of time, and ancient cultures have been using them to beneficial effect since long before recorded history. Now we're starting to pull that puzzle apart and figure out what those chemicals are and what they do and how they affect our bodies, etc. And this is all great news, but I think the reason that you're talking about of why they've been shared in pictures and in oral traditions, etc., for so long is that there's always been some mysticism surrounding mushrooms. And I think that is the reason. It's that they're so variable. They can produce all these chemicals that can do all these magic things to our bodies, etc. And pre-science, we didn't understand why that was. They were just these like mythical, amazing creatures, these things that we shared the world with, and we didn't really know why they did these things. I love being like kind of the nerd that I am, that we're starting to unravel a lot of that stuff. But I think the folklore surrounding them and our reverence for mushrooms in pretty much every ancient culture in the world is not only well justified, like we can really easily understand why that is.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And this quite a beautiful thing. You know, they all mushrooms are magic, but sometimes just once. You know, like you don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all mushrooms are edible. Some only once. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I teach a lot. There's another good oldie but goodie like that on the edible side of things. There are old mushroom hunters and there are bold mushroom hunters, but there are no old, bold mushroom hunters.
Yes, that is also true. Right, on this note, Steve, I'm going to just cut to our commercial break. That way our sponsors can share the work that they're doing in this space. And then we'll have you right back and we'll dig into some more of the science and things that you're teaching here around mushrooms. Okay?
You got it. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBG TV, broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Legacy 420 have an awesome array of cannabis-infused beverages, from pop to Nature's Nectar's teas, all in amazing flavors. What a selection! We even have a delicious mango-infused juice, and let me tell you, it's delicious.
Everything is infused in-house, so we buy our syrup from the same place where everybody else buys their syrup for their pop, and the infusion is done in the lab. It's all canned here, labeled here, produced 100% on Tyndonega.
We have two lines of drinks. One is called our Nature's Nectar. That was our original line that we came out with, and then we also have a line under the Red E brand. We have them in 10 milligrams, 30 milligram, and 60 milligram cans.
What a great selection for a get-together with friends or after a long day. Remember, if you want to wet your whistle with on-site lab-tested products, come see your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hello and welcome back to the Integration Station here with Stevie Funfer. You guys can check him out on Instagram. This is the guy that's showing you how food is medicine and how to find it and all that kind of stuff. So I would love to, take this next portion and really dig into some of the teachings that you've been sharing around Ontario. So anybody on the eastern side of North America here, you may have access to these same things. So please, Steve, whatever you've got here.
Yeah, so if we're doing shameless plugs, let me tell you a little bit about some of the mushroom courses that I give all summer and fall. They run out to the end of October. The first and probably most popular one, definitely most popular one, I can't even keep up with it a lot of the times, is my Introduction to Foraging for Wild Edible Mushrooms workshop. It's an afternoon class, or sometimes in the morning, depending if I'm double booked on a certain day. And it walks you through all the things that you need to know, including a 6-page handout that's yours to keep and take home, starting from the foundations, from the modern, scientific, safe, reliable ways of mushroom hunting. That includes anatomy, best practices for use, storage, eating, and in the kitchen, etc., and even some recipes. And that takes place every single Wednesday and Saturday right here on my property in the Haliburton Highlands. And you can book a spot at deeprootsadventure.ca or .com. I guess I should look that up. It's deeprootsadventure.ca or .com. But if you go to my Instagram, which is Instagram/Stevie_Funfer, just like where is it? Right here. Where is it? On the screen. Okay, Stevie Funfer on Instagram. There's a link in my bio. There's a link tree when you click on that. And I think among the first links, if not the very first link, is a link to the Deep Roots Adventure website. There it is. Yeah. Hey, there you go. Where you can book a spot in either my Intro to Foraging for Wild Edible Mushrooms, which teach you everything you need to know to get started, and a lot more about foraging for wild edible mushrooms. There's a lot. There's my Common Medicinal Mushrooms of Ontario workshop, and there's only one left this season. It's on October 7th. So if you're interested in these medicinal or functional mushrooms that we're talking about, I do a whole morning seminar on that very subject. And again, that includes identification, so you can get out and do this for yourself and be self-reliant and self-sufficient. That includes best practices for storage, preservation, dosing, uses, etc. Okay, and in the wintertime, starting probably sometime late December or January, it kind of depends on the weather during chaga harvesting season, and I'm a very strong advocate for winter harvest only of the chaga fungus. You could have a very spirited debate with other experts on the internet who will tell you can take it any time of year. I am a strong proponent of winter harvest, but anyway, I give a entire workshop just exclusively focused on the chaga fungus all winter long, right here in Haliburton, Ontario, at the Haliburton Highlands Museum, every second Sunday. I don't know what the schedule is going to be this year, but that's the third and final course on medicinal mushrooms, or mushrooms, that I'm currently giving, and that takes place all winter long right here in Haliburton as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And thank you too for bringing up the foraging in the winter part too, because a lot of mushrooms, they'll pop up in different seasons, but chaga is one that it is around all year. But I was always taught as well, take it between November and before the birch sap runs. So that would probably be around March.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
I advocate for that too. That's part of that is based on some traditional Aboriginal wisdom, and I tend to put a lot of stock in that, even though there wasn't science at that time. I think that, there's validity in all that anecdotal evidence as well. But also there's strong new science supporting the fact that it is very likely, although we don't have concrete evidence yet, that the fungus itself increases in potency as it prepares for that freezing stage and dormancy. There's a whole host of those beneficial compounds that get ramped up in production not for us. In fact, to protect the fungus itself through, it grows in very cold, harsh climates. And in order to not regularly get temperatures of minus 30 centigrade or colder, to protect itself, it creates a lot of these compounds so that it can get through dormancy into the next spring. And there's mounting evidence that as winter approaches and as both the tree and the fungus go into dormancy, the production of those compounds gets ramped up. So, and I think you'll notice any reputable company selling chaga on the internet, for example, sort of touts and markets that it was winter harvested, and that's for good reason. I believe that potency is stronger, and there's a number of other really good reasons for harvesting chaga in the wintertime, namely that it doesn't rain during the winter. Now, climate change is changing that a little bit. Unfortunately, we get January and February rain sometimes, but that didn't used to be the case. And in the speed with which climate change is taking place is an evolutionary eye blink, right? So the chaga fungus hasn't had time to adapt to that yet. But without rain, there are a couple of really important benefits. We're talking about medicine. We want potency and regular dosing. And not only are there more of those compounds, we think, as the fungus goes into dormancy, the lack of rain that happens into that big, giant, basically sponge or cork that is the chaga fungus may be leaching out some of those compounds throughout all the rest of the year when many of those compounds are water soluble. Okay, this is worth keeping in mind. What do we do primarily with chaga at home? We make tea.
Yes.
Yeah, we make tea, right? Because many of the compounds, not all of them, but many of the really beneficial ones, especially in the antioxidant department, are water soluble. So they may be leaching out all year long with rain. Okay, so that's just one good reason. The second, too, is that with moisture comes all sorts of bacteria and other fungi, etc., that can develop in every other part of the year. And when we're talking about medicine, we're also pretty concerned with safety, right? So in the wintertime, when both the tree and the fungus are dormant and everything's locked up, frozen, bacteria and mold, etc., cannot develop. Okay, so that's another really great reason for winter harvesting of chaga right there, is that anything else that may be occurring in the forest that is not good for us, that could attach itself to that fungus, isn't present in the winter.
Yeah. And honestly, like, nature is so abundant most of the rest of the year, spring, summer, fall, it's nice to have certain things for the winter too. It's like, that's, everything that you're saying validates that, but it's like, it's all happening for a reason, and it's all for us if we could just get in alignment with that. And it's bringing it back full circle to even your own story. Mine's similar in that I spent over a decade in the hospitality and tourism industry. My circadian rhythm was all over the place, but once I got back to nature, right, it was, I started getting healthier too. And part of that is this connection. You're getting the connection because you're getting foraged foods from soil that hasn't been contaminated. You're getting all of that information from our ancestors, from the bugs that are way older than us, from the rocks that hold memory that are way older than us. It's all coming up to the surface and creating nutrition and nourishing our bodies, but also connecting us 100%. To that. Yeah.
Quick note on just that, that connection to nature. Full disclosure, like one of the reasons that I started writing and teaching these courses on mushrooms is that I found in my own life, much like you did in the hospitality industry and the music business, I was so disconnected, excuse me, from these Ontario forests that I grew up in. My family's business was a hunting and fishing camp. I spent all my summers up here taking guys out on the water fishing. I still do guided fishing to this day. And roaming around old goat trails and back in the forest. And, I spent all my time up here when I was a kid. It was our family business, right? And then I got disconnected from that for a really long time, decades, where it was planes, trains, and automobiles, living in hotels, eating shitty. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, it's okay? All good. Yeah.
Eating shitty restaurant food and pizza delivered to the studio, working 15, 20 hours a day, living on coffee and a lot of other substances just to keep me going 15, 20 hours a day, right? Making records. And I completely lost my connection to nature, like most people in the modern world. And it took me coming back to Ontario, back to this property, for me to realize that loss in my life. And the reason I started, I think, subconsciously writing and giving these courses is my sneaky way of trying to connect people back to nature. You know, because here's what I can tell you. If you get good at mushroom hunting, sorry?
Come back to the garden.
We will. But the reason I started giving the courses specifically is like I said, like kind of my sneaky way of connecting people back to nature. Here's what I can tell you. If you get good at mushroom hunting, or even curious or interested in it, and you start doing it even just as a fun hobby, you are going to start experiencing and living the forest in a different way. You are going to necessarily understand the connections, the vital connections between the plants and the fungi and the trees and the bugs and the insects and the birds and the macro life in the soil. Okay. If you become good at this, or even if you just get curious, you start seeing the forest in a much different way. You start participating in nature in a much deeper, more profound way as a mushroom hunter. Okay. You're not going to be just walking through the trails, hiking and taking pretty pictures like the freaking tourists. Okay. You're going to be participating. And that is really, I think, the hidden benefit of mushroom hunting, is that it connects you to that soil and to that land and to these ecosystems in a participatory way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You know, and how many people are out there searching connection right now, you know, that feeling pain and they want to heal. You know, this literally is the answer, you know, and it was quotes like by Hippocrates here, food is medicine, you know, that, you know, it's so simple.
Let food be thy medicine. That was a huge one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he had some great ones about, you know, if you're not your own doctor, then you're an idiot.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but it's true. I don't think that was his exact words, but it was like he said stupid or something, you know?
Pretty much, like, yeah, might as well, in a nutshell.
Yeah. Guys, go look that up, the Hippocrates quotes. They are grand.
Well, yeah, for sure. The Hippocratic Oath, right? Do no harm and let food be thy medicine, right? Those are two of the most famous quotes. And I think there's so much truth in it. If I just take it back to my own personal experience, you know, living the life that I was living, all those bad habits, especially the dietary ones, are what got me into that bad spot and ended my career as a guitar player. And set me down that whole path into the chemo drugs and the bullshit. You know, I didn't want anything to do with any of it, and it was only getting back to the forest and reconnecting with nature that's kind of, you know, cured me. So this is a line I use a lot when I'm talking about medicinal mushrooms in my courses, but it's like so true. I just want to reiterate it. It's like, so these doctors all around the world tell me I have this incurable disease, right? And it's probably still in me or whatever, but I've been symptom free for over 4 years. If you have no symptoms, who cares? Right. Yeah. And nature did that for me.
Yeah. And that's so amazing. It's not like you're just adapting to it. Like how they said, oh, you're just going to have to deal with this. You're like, fine, I'm going to deal with it, but I'm dealing with it my way. And the more power you took back, the more result you got. You know, if you would have accepted 100%. that diagnosis, if you wouldn't have fought as hard as you did, if you wouldn't have done the research and the action steps, like taking action is such a big part of it. You're like,
just getting off those pills was very scary to me, man, because you get it so burned into your head that you need them, and they are, you know, there's methotrexate is not a bad drug. It's actually a pretty good one. It's like, it does stop the disease, but all the damn side effects were so terrible. I was immunodeficient. I was living in Africa at the time. You know, I'd get a little tiny cut and it would bleed for a month. Okay. It was destroying my liver. I had to take other pills to support my immune system because my system stopped producing white blood cells. Okay. Because these toxic chemical drugs were destroying my ability to do that. I was living in Africa at the time, allergic to the sun. One of the side effects of that damn drug was that I was allergic to the sun. So 30-degree heat, 35, 40 degrees, and I'm wearing a freaking hoodie. Okay. Because I had to. All right. And I used to have to schedule a day off to take those damn drugs. I had to do it on Sundays because I would barf every time I took them. And the whole day was a write-off. You know, the medicinal mushrooms I take or the foods that I eat out of the forest in my garden don't do that to me.
Can you share a little bit more about what it is that you're doing now, what your routine, your day looks like? Or even like, I don't know if we've got time for it, but you know, like what it looked like before to what it looks like now.
Oh, it's night and day. It's like if you had told me even 10 years ago that I would be doing what I'm doing today or living the way I'm living, I wouldn't have believed you. I probably would have laughed. You know, my days looked like before, like, you know, work till the wee hours of the morning, getting a few hours of sleep, going right back, jam full of coffee, and sitting in front of a console with a bunch of blinking lights, no natural air, no sunlight for 15 hours a day. And that's what it just looked like. Just whatever food or stimulant I could ram in my body to keep that schedule up for decades, right? That's what, you know, in a nutshell, it looked like. I mean, I'm not saying my life was amazing. I was living in Morocco at the time. You know, I was happily married, doing a lot of traveling. I had a lot of animals and dogs and a very beautiful life, actually. But health-wise, you know, that was like, you can only do that for so long. And I think aging is the thing that really, you know, gets you to realize these things, like when it all starts catching up with you. Because, you know, when I was a young guy on the road, you know, like everybody, you kind of think you're invincible. You live hard and you know, you play music and party all night and sleep half the day and get up and do it all over again. I did that for freaking decades, man. But it does catch up with you, you know? And I don't think I would have been doing what I'm doing today had I not got sick, you know, at all. I think I would still be doing literally the exact same thing if I was in good health. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a way. I don't know. It wasn't awesome. I went through some rough years there. But just to get back to your original question, like what my day looks like today is very, very different, man. I'm often getting up with the crack of dawn to get out and, you know, go do some guiding, fishing out on the lake. If anybody's interested in guided fishing, who's in the area in central Ontario or anywhere in Ontario, I got people that come in from all over the province and all over. I've had literally people to fly and come to fish with me. I run the guided fishing program out of Halliburton Forest Wildlife Reserve in Ontario. It's primarily a trout fishery. We fish rainbow trout, speckled trout, or brook trout, and lake trout primarily, and bass in the summer. And I do it all in a little tin boat with an electric motor, emissions free, and it's real fun. You can book half days or full days at yoursoutdoors.ca if you're interested in that. But that's what a lot of typical mornings look like, is like getting up, piling all the gear into my Jeep, and heading off to Halliburton Forest to go pull a few trout out of the water for someone's dinner, right? Because I'm trying to encourage them to eat good food and get back to nature. And fishing is another great way to connect people back to our lakes and rivers and forests, right? So that might be the typical day on a day where I'm not booked either fishing or giving a workshop, you know, because I do them pretty frequently, especially this time of year. I'm slammed in the summer and fall, especially the fall, as wild mushroom season ramps up and all the good edibles and medicinal start coming into fruit. It gets nuts. So that might be another, you know, morning or afternoon or a whole day of teaching. And then on the days where I'm not doing that, I'm putting around my garden in the morning, you know, pruning and harvesting and fermenting stuff and preserving things for our long, cold, harsh Canadian winters, right? Or I'm out in the woods hunting. You know, I've long since quit the industrial systems and really specifically meat. I consume almost no factory farmed meat for both ethical and health reasons. My personal view is that if you want to continue consuming meat, there's no better way to do it ethically than to become a skilled and efficient hunter and become responsible for the meat that you choose to consume. And also in doing that, you're going to realize that, like ancient cultures around the world, who considered meat to be a precious, precious commodity, not just a thing you can get willy-nilly on a shelf at any time with a faceless thing that doesn't even resemble an animal in a goddamn plastic package. If you're harvesting if you're harvesting for yourself, all of a sudden that whole equation changes.
Yep.
And for health reasons, ethically and for health reasons, you're just automatically getting rid of all of those hormones and growth hormones and antibiotics and junk and ammonia they spray down in these factories to mitigate the negative effects of all the feces on the damn industrial meats. Never mind all the hormones and chemicals, and you're just eliminating all that stuff from your diet, right? So that's, I guess, I might be out on the water, I might be out in the forest hunting, I might be foraging, I might be working in my garden. Those are probably what most of my days look like.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. It is such a change. And I guess that would be, one of my next questions is for anybody out there listening that wants to make these changes and just isn't in alignment with it. What would be that greatest piece of advice that you've got for anybody who's, struggling making those changes right now?
You know what? Here, I guess the one thing I would say is that if I can do it, anybody can. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not particularly special in any way, other than I grew up and I had a little skill set to start with, especially with fishing, as we did it professionally. It was like one of our family's businesses, right? And my dad, and I was lucky too that my dad was quite a prolific home gardener. We always had a couple of raised beds in the backyard, and he was always doing that, which I know a lot of people aren't exposed to. So I was really lucky in that regard. I had a little base. But here's what I can tell you. All the information is out there. Even if you want to do this on any level, whether it be a hobby or whether you go fully down the rabbit hole the way I have and you change your whole life, anything in between is good. If you live in an apartment and you can do some container gardening and you grow some cherry tomatoes, that's awesome. Start there. Grow stuff you like. Just get your hands on some soil. Connect to nature in whatever way you can. That's the advice that I would give to anybody. Not everybody can do what I am doing right now, where I'm very lucky to have this property and all these, natural sources of foraged and wild foods, etc. You could get into hunting, fishing, or foraging. Even if you live in a city, you make weekend trips. You do it in whatever capacity you can, and you start removing yourself from that toxic stew of the modern world in whatever fashion or amount makes sense for you. Nothing but good can come from it. That's probably my best piece of advice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's a great piece of advice because we really are what we eat, So if we're eating food that's foraged from the land, we're eating the same things as our ancestors, and they had so much more energy than we did. A lot of people are out there being like, I want some more energy so I can keep up with my kids. Or I need I need something so that I can heal, or so that I can be an entrepreneur, so that, like, anything, it's like we need that. And so if you're eating food from nature, you're getting all that you need. When you're eating the stuff that's on a grocery store shelf that's like 99 cents, or nowadays it's like freaking, you're paying $3 or $5, $10 to kill yourself, but each dollar is a dollar for the world that you want to live in. So if you're voting with your dollar, it's like, no, I don't want that. Like, I don't know how much chicken is or anything like that, but what I do know, like, speaking on that for a minute, is that in those like factories, a lot of them don't see light. Why would you want to become something that, and not saying anything towards the chicken, it didn't choose that, but something that didn't ever have light. There's a lot of vitamin D deficiency, especially in Canada. Most people are. They don't even test people for it in Canada because we all are. But so what we want is, a chicken that eats the bugs, gets the vitamin D and the vitamin B12, and is like, getting it from the soils and that. And then we eat that. And then we have the nutrition that we need. That doesn't happen from an animal that never sees sunlight, or that has all those other chemicals in it, like, as you mentioned, or like a cow that's like stressed out watching all of its other brothers go, and it's like stressed out and tense. It's like, okay, well, now you're stressed out and tense because you ate that meat from that scared herd animal.
For sure. I think there's something to that. Well, here's what I can tell you, just to sort of cut through all the, because I could, honestly, we could do an hour just on the horrors of factory farming and the ills of the industrial food system. It's the literal number one polluter in terms of greenhouse gases, really specifically industrial meats, but even just big ag, right? Big agriculture is really terrible for our planet.
They're the farts. The farts is not from the cows. It's like it's those people on the top.
It's industrial agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, it's us, man. So here's what I can tell you without going down that rabbit hole, which is a whole rabbit hole. We could you and I could probably do, you know, hours on that one topic alone. But here's what I can tell you. Homegrown, wild, foraged, hunted, fished, whatever you're into and whatever makes sense for you, those foods are higher in nutritional density and they're better for you. Okay. You will feel better if you eat them, and your health will be better if you eat them, and specifically your mental health. You know, I'm not even just talking about our bodies. Like in my case with my disease and everything, I had to fix this thing with my body, but your mental health will be better. Like organic gardening is a great example. Just, I know we're getting way off topic from mushrooms, but I'm a huge gardener. It's a huge part of my life. But just having your hands in contact with that soil and all those microorganisms, there's a ton of new research suggesting that a lot of those microorganisms, etc., that you're in contact and inhaling and breathing and putting into your system, they just make you feel better. They're good for your microbiome, your second brain, your gut that's down in your body, right? We literally refer to our gut these days as our second brain. There's as many neurons in there as there is in our freaking head, right?
It's where all
So
of our
any way you can connect back
serotonin
with nature, get your hand. That's right. So any way that you can connect back to nature is only, like I said originally, just when I did a much shorter version of this, is like any way you can connect back to nature, eat better foods, and live better by doing it can only do good for you. And the last note that I would make on, you know, I get a lot of people on my channel at Stevie_Funfer on Instagram. I get a lot of people who kind of live vicariously through me, and they want to do all these things, but they have busy professional careers and they can't do it for X, Y, and Z, or I got kids or whatever, etc. Here's my advice to those people. Thank you for following along. First of all, I'm more than happy to like share my journey with you and try and, you know, promote some good habits and all that kind of stuff and just let you know how I'm living. But here's the biggest thing, like for me, like in my head, that it took for me to kind of like, you know, drop out and like start living this way. The number one comment I get is, oh, it's so much effort. You put so much time into food, hunting, fishing, your garden, foraging. How do you manage all this time? Because I do a lot of tutorials on how to preserve this stuff and use it, and cooking and recipes. And it is really labor intensive and time sucking, okay, to live this way and to be responsible for your food. But here's what the biggest thing for me was in my head. It was like, being a busy professional dude for so many years, it's like, make time for the things that are important. If your career is important to you, sure, of course, make time for that, and your kids and all the other things you got going on in your life. But for me, and this is like a personal thing, right? Maybe food isn't the most important thing to you, or maybe you wouldn't do it on the level that I'm doing it. Maybe you're not sick. Maybe you don't have a problem to fix in the first place or whatever. But if you start making time for the things that are important, food, namely, in whatever capacity you can do it, it's that commitment is really, really important. For me, harvesting my beans at the right time or pulling garlic from the ground is literally just as important as going and making money in some other way or whatever, right? So it's prioritizing things. If you want to live well, you have to decide what that looks like for you. For me, it's this. But with regards to food, and remember I was saying, just do it in any capacity that you can. Make time for those little cherry tomatoes on your balcony. Make time to take a weekend with your kids and go on a camping trip and learn how to safely forage mushrooms, whatever that is, you know. Get back out, connect to nature. Nothing good can come from it. Even the time commitment.
Yes. Thank you so much. That's such a great piece of advice. Thank you for being here, Steve. We will have you back again.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
For everything. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, let's totally do that. Thanks for having me, and
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbell